Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the CJRB Tigris, which is kind of a tanky, sort of cleavery, sort of interesting, right? This is an interesting folding knife. It's one that I definitely wanted to get my hands on when they kind of started showing it off. And thanks to Artisan Cutlery, they sent me one. So I really appreciate that. I will link this guy right down below. It is coming soon to some of the retailers that I use, so I'll link that down below. By the time you guys see this, it might actually be available, so feel free to check that link. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. There's a link for Patreon right down below. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Overall length of the CJRB Tigris coming in at about 8 1/4, 8 1/2 if you go all the way back to this lanyard thing with some people might suggest that that is a glass breaker. I don't think so, but maybe you could use it for that. I don't really know. The blade length is coming in, you could measure it 3 1/2. You could also, if you want to measure it all the way to down here to the scale, you could say 3.75. The cutting edge is absolutely just shy of 3 1/2 inches. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and its little brother, the Ontario Rat Model 2. So you can see here, it's a little shorter than the Rat 1, but it's way taller. The blade profile, the entire profile of the knife, there's just a lot of knife here. Up against the PM2 and Para 3, once again, you can see just a big boy, right? About the same length overall as the PM2. Last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and its little brother, the Mini Griptilian. So yeah, there you go. I think it's well established now, right? Big knife. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's pretty thick. Yeah, I mean, in fact, it's very thick. Let's go ahead and be real about what's going on here. This is pretty thick, you know, between the steel liners and the G10. This is quite a bit of knife. It's also very tall. It's got a flipper tab, not the most obtrusive for the design, but it's tall, right? Maximum height, absolutely clearing the height of the PM2. So this is not going to work in a lot of people's pockets because it's just going to be too big. We'll go ahead and weigh it here. Actually, first, let's take a look at the inside. The inside of the knife is a little bit, can we see, can you see in there? Yeah, it is milled out just a little bit for weight reduction, which is cool. That I'm sure was absolutely needed. Because this would otherwise be an extremely heavy knife, and it's already pretty heavy as it is. Weight, I'm gonna guess this weighs 6 1/2 ounces. Yeah, 6.31 ounces. So yeah, it's gonna, you know, ratios are gonna be off. It's a tall object, it's a thick object. You're gonna have to want to carry a big knife, which there are plenty of people out there, including myself, who like to carry big knives. It will work for some of you, it will not work for a lot of you. Just do what you will with that information. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. You can absolutely get my tools now. They are listed right down in the description. T8 on the pivot, and unfortunately we still have T6 screws on the body. And I'm gonna guess there's probably a couple more underneath here because these look like they're holding the scales on, yeah, all the way, maybe not. Well, yeah, there have to be. You can actually see, you can almost see through that. There's a little peg or something like that. So it's still a simple liner lock. So it's not going to be horribly difficult to take apart. Just make sure you've got a good place to keep all of those parts and some quality tools so you don't strip anything. Let's go ahead and move into the main part of the review here. So this is a flipper running on bearings, and it's made by CJRB. This is using the proprietary AR RPM9 powder form steel, which is really cool. That's basically powder formed 9CR 18 MOV steel, which is very well balanced, and it's fine even in its ingot form. But this powder form stuff is going to be just fine, and I think it's appropriate in this general realm. It's to my knowledge, it's the only powder form steel that you can get in this territory at all. I mean, it's the only budget designed powder form steel, right? So even distribution of, the composition. And we're looking at a stainless steel with decent edge retention, decent toughness, and pretty easy to sharpen in its ingot form. So there you go. That's cool. It does flip well. I don't have a problem with that. To me, it's more of a light switch. This area right here is a bit weird. See, it's like up, and then there's an angle, and the liner lock is part of the angle. Bizarre. You're also really, really close to a double clutch situation. You kind of have to get to the back end of that angle and let the hammer of the flipper tab come down on your finger a little bit. You get it too high up here, and you're in double clutch territory. Absolutely. So, not that big of a deal. Just make sure you're kind of paying attention where your finger is. This is also not super duper comfortable to disengage because of the angle of the liner and then the actual angle like this way. I'm saying the way that it's angled like this, and it just is kind of angular in there, right? I mean, it's kind of, a job for your thumb to do. Either, right-handed or left-handed. So it flips and it's smooth, right? So the detent is too, there I missed it on that double clutch. It's smooth and it flips and the detent's good. It's just kind of weird right there, right? So this was kind of an aesthetic thing where to get the aesthetic look that they wanted, they had to sacrifice some little bit of function that probably mostly just knife reviewers will complain about. But if you have this knife, I'm guessing that you've noticed that that's a little bit bothersome. This particular one has kind of a denim blue, and then we've got the red pivot color, we've got the black pivot, and then black G10 underneath. It's kind of neat. I kind of like, normally I don't like this crazy busyness, but something about how they did this here, it just looks a little bit better to me. That is, of course, an aesthetic thing, because I've made similar comments about Kershaw knives where they do this busy and sometimes robotic, like these unnecessary lines, and I'm like, I don't like that. I can't explain why I like it on this knife and not on some of the Kershaw knives I commented on. It's just an individual aesthetic thing. So some people are going to like this and some people won't. Ergonomically, it's all right. There's definitely a hot spot here with the pocket clip. The edges here are kind of knocked down. They're also pretty angular. I'm very aware that I'm handling a random geometric shape, right? I mean, I guess everything is a random geometric shape, but it just feels like such an odd blocky thing. So the pocket clip is what I notice most, but if the pocket clip wasn't there, I'd definitely be noticing some of these edges here. It's not terrible, it's just, it's angular, right? Told you guys I was going to start getting more picky. The blade is cool. It's the coolest part of the knife, this heavy sort of sheep's foot thing, and it gets down to a very, very thin cutting edge. We didn't actually measure blade stock thickness. You guys want to know? I'm guessing that is, will it stand? Yeah, it'll stand. It's got to be 120 thousandths or less. That's my guess anyway. So let's make sure we can get a hold of it on the flat. Yeah, okay. All right, so it's not that thin. It's 125 thousandths, but that's fine. Considering how tall the blade is, you can imagine it does taper down to a nice, thin, slicey edge. So puncture test is going to be a little harder considering the tip on this guy, but your slicing task should be plenty easy. As per usual, it says CJRB on one side, and on the other it says SER or serial J1919 and then AR RPM 9, and then it has to say China right there. These are not made in the United States. These are absolutely made in China. Do with that information what you will. I don't like to see it on there though. I wish it just said AR RPM 9 and CJRB. But it doesn't, so okay, whatever. But yeah, the cutting bevel looks good, nice and clean. No, weird nicks or rolls or anything from the factory. There is a stop pin back here. There is no shouldering. It's a nice big old fat stop pin, but there's no shouldering on the spine of the tang of the blade. That's fine, no big deal. Let's see here, the backspacer thing. I have no idea why this has this sort of, I don't know. I mean, this whole thing looks like a dinosaur to me, right? So this looks just some sort of extension of bone or scale just sticking out of the back of this dinosaur. I'm not sure why this is like this. Could you use it to break glass? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe that was the idea there. It does hold the lanyard way back here. My thought is, why not just make this a continuous gear pattern backspacer, don't have this big area right here, and then don't have a lanyard hole, because who cares about lanyards? Sorry. The 7 lanyard people are like, we care! We care! I'm just kidding. I know there's more. I know there's like 8 or 9 of you. Okay, I'm done with that joke. I'm sorry. But yeah, the backspacer is super weird to me. The pocket clip is deep carry and the screws are recessed, but because of how they did this build and how long they insisted on this thing being, you're definitely going to feel it. Functionally, it's fine. It'll pull the knife in and out of your pocket and it'll carry it super deep. The only thing that's going to stick out is that super, super duper weird backspacer. So there you go. That's something you're going to have to deal with. The knife does lock up completely and totally solid. And centering is, it's a little bit off. Let's check and see if we can recenter it, because I have probably flipped this a few times. Most likely, we just need to turn the pivot a little bit. So let's find out. Can we do that? Oh, yeah. How are we now? Are we centered? It sure looks like it. How's the action? Exactly the same as it was. Can I still shake it shut? Yeah. So yeah, don't freak out if your knife does it. Oh my God, it's not centered because I flipped it 200 times. Just get some blue 242 Loctite. It's called blue Loctite and it comes in a red container. Just make sure that it says 242. Apply some Loctite to the pivot screw, get it centered up, leave it alone for 24 to 36 hours in the absence of oxygen, and it should be fine for a while. Eventually you'll have to reset it, but you do not need to send your knife back for that. All right, so what do I think of this? This thing is gigantic. It's going to be way too big and way too cumbersome for a lot of people. The materials are good. I love the Air RPM 9 steel. I think that's great. Something that kind of bothers me a little bit is this is, at the time of my recording, like on Blade HQ, this thing says coming soon. So you can buy it at the CJRB website, which sometimes has ultra competitive pricing and sometimes they don't. What's the price on CJRB's website? I'm pretty sure it's 80 bucks. That's pretty high. But I also know that when it comes to retailers, the retailers will have it priced lower, because that's generally how that works, right? You not always, but you're usually gonna pay more on the manufacturer side, right? So if this knife comes in at about $60 at retailer sites, I'd say, yeah, this is a fun buy for somebody who's just looking for a big, sort of chunky, interesting kind of personality knife, right? Because that's kind of what this is. Will it work? Will it function? Oh yeah, absolutely. It's just going to be kind of beefy and cumbersome. But come on, it's not like CJRB didn't know what they were doing. Look at the popularity of the Kaiser Sheepdog, right? I mean, that's one of the most compared. This knife is constantly being compared to that. Kaiser Sheepdog, especially the XL, is massively impractical, but it's just cool, so people buy it. It's the same kind of thing here. It's fine. So if you want to buy it for that reason, or you want to buy it and carry it as a serious cutting tool, that's fine, right? It's just going to be a bit cumbersome. Either way, $80 is definitely high. I think 60 bucks makes a lot more sense. Why 60 and not 40 like the other budget knives in CJRB's line or some of the competitive stuff from Civivi? I just feel like there's a little bit more going on here. There's a little bit more styling. There's a little bit more. It's not a crazy amount, but there's just a little bit more with the layers of G10 and the different texturing, right? And the aluminum pivot collar and the backspacer, right? In this, the powder formed Air RPM 9 steel. There's more going on here. I'd say maybe 65 bucks, right? So we're at this point where it's like at maximum I'm saying, oh, 65. CJRB's got it listed at 80. What happens if they drop a Blade HQ and they're $70 or $74.99? It's one of those things where you're going to have to make a gut instinct call, right? For people who are interested in this, I would say 65 bucks is about as much that I would pay if I was super duper like, oh my gosh, I have to have this. And I do think it's cool. I think it's cool enough that I really, when I reached out, I said, I definitely want to look at that. That's a weird boy, 65 bucks about as much as I'd be willing to pay. What's that based on? I don't know. It's based on everything else I've ever handled. And it's based on my own preferences. So you can kind of take what I'm saying and decide for yourself whether or not this is worth it to you. I have provided a link right down below for you guys to pick it up. But this is a weird one because it's like they haven't arrived at retailers yet, but you can technically buy them. So it's a weird, it's a weird point for me to review it. So this is a cool knife. It's made well. It's what I expected from CJRB, and it's nice to see them kind of messing around with some, it's not like they don't mess around with some oddball stuff, but it's nice to see an oddball design from them kind of hit the mark, right? People like these tanky cleaver knives, and this one kind of works with, The main emphasis being the pocket clip and the weirdness of the backspacer, or the shape of the end of the backspacer. But everything else, yeah, pretty interesting. I think that's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Thank you again to CJRB/Artisan Cutlery for sending this in for me to review. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.